night. Trump's options in Iran, when a church becomes an immigration sanctuary. And from meme to millionaire.
I'm on the set, we shooting it up like I got a tech, little bitch.
White House dysfunction hit delirious new heights today as President Trump went on the record to trash his former chief strategist and campaign manager Steve Bannon. Excerpts from a new book quoting Bannon called the president's son, Don Jr., treasonous for his meeting with Russian operatives at Trump Tower. Bannon also suggested that presidential son-in-law Jared Kushner is guilty of money laundering. Early this afternoon, President Trump released a formal statement saying that Bannon had, quote, lost his mind, and calling him a serial leaker who doesn't know how to win and who never had an important role. Bannon held the White House top rank until Trump fired him on August 18th. Before that, he ran the final 4 months of Trump's presidential campaign. The previous campaign manager, Paul Manafort, filed a lawsuit today challenging his indictment in the FBI's Russia probe. After agents raided Manafort's home this summer, Trump called him, quote, a very decent man. The Republican majority in the Senate narrowed today as 2 Democrats were sworn into office, and one of them took over a spot from the GOP. Doug Jones is taking the Alabama seat once held by Republican Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Tina Smith replaced Senator Al Franken, who stepped down after allegations of sexual misconduct. Jones will have to run again in 2020. Smith will face a special election this November to carry out the rest of Franken's term. After a strange episode that involved Lebanon's prime minister resigning while in Saudi Arabia, then reversing the resignation last month, diplomatic relations between the two countries seem to have returned to normal. Saudi's ambassador to Lebanon officially took up his post today. His Lebanese counterpart has also been approved in Riyadh. The surprise resignation announcement by Prime Minister Saad Hariri in November was widely believed to be forced by Saudi Arabia. Spotify reportedly filed confidential documents last month to go public, which would mean it will be preparing for an IPO at the same time it's facing a $1.6 billion lawsuit over copyright claims. Spotify is being sued by Wixon Music Publishing, a company that licenses the work of Tom Petty, Neil Young, Missy Elliott, and others. The suit, filed in California, alleges that the music streaming service took a shortcut to building its business, failing to license compositions or compensate songwriters and publishers for rights to the works. More than 10,000 songs are listed in the lawsuit. Spotify has more than 60 million paying subscribers and is reportedly valued at $19 billion. The company declined to comment on the suit. As anti-government protests continue to channel massive social unrest in Iran, President Trump tweeted praise for the country's citizens, though he offered them only a vaguely worded assurance of U.S. support. But come mid-January, Trump will have the opportunity to do more than just speak out. He'll be facing a decision about whether or not to take action on a key deadline related to the Iran nuclear deal. And the choices in front of him aren't so simple.
One of the most powerful tools that President Trump has at his disposal to respond to the Iranian regime is reimposing sanctions against Iran. And in about a week, he'll have the opportunity to do that, if he wants to. The Iran nuclear deal lifted a bunch of sanctions against the country, but it requires the president to decide every 120 days whether to keep those sanctions lifted by issuing a waiver. That deadline is coming up around the 12th. If President Trump doesn't issue the waiver, then the full complement of American sanctions against Iran's oil and banking industries will go back into effect. But that decision would violate our part of the nuclear deal, effectively blowing up the agreement. President Trump has been a harsh critic of the deal, so he might find this option pretty tempting. But reimposing sanctions could make the problem worse. It might actually bolster the Iranian regime by playing into pro-government propaganda that blames the U.S. for all of the nation's economic problems. The worst-case scenario, Iran would use Trump's decision to renege on the deal as an excuse to bow out of it entirely and restart its nuclear program. Delaware Senator Chris Coons told me that blowing up the nuclear deal would be the wrong move. But Trump does have another option to respond to the Iranian regime.
There's new power the administration has to impose sanctions on individual Iranian leaders that would make them more pariahs internationally. They shouldn't tear up the Iran nuclear deal. The president's been threatening to do that. That would be a big mistake. That would distance us from our vital European allies. That would put at risk a deal that's working to constrain Iran's nuclear weapons program. And the president should instead use the new sanctions authority that Congress has given him, that has bipartisan support, and that could effectively restrain some of Iran's genuinely awful behavior.
I mean, why would you choose sort of new sanctions over reimposing these sanctions that already existed?
Let's be clear. The regime in Tehran is a terrible regime that is imposing an extreme version of Islam on its people, and that has lots of internal challenges. One of the challenges we faced from Iran was that they were making very rapid progress towards developing a nuclear weapon. This agreement, reached after very hard negotiations with some of our vital allies like Germany and France and the UK, stopped their progress on that program. Why would we throw away that agreement just to have some grand gesture moment when there are protests in the streets in Iran?
What is the impact? Why is it important for the Trump administration to the Iranian people to take action?
Part of what kicked off these protests was average Iranians learning that the proposed budget for this coming year was going to continue to spend more and more money on Iranian Revolutionary Guard that is used to suppress people internally and not to support the average people. And they're frustrated, they're tired, they've been promised a lot and they've received little.
So we should continue to incite protests through sanctions?
We should do things that send to the Iranian people a strong signal that we support their legitimate aspirations for a more free, fair, and open society. And we should send signals to the Iranian regime that if they continue to oppress their own people, if they continue to support terrorism in the region, that there will be costs and consequences.
It isn't normal for Carmela Apolonio Hernandez and her family to celebrate Kwanzaa, but their whole life hasn't been normal. Not since they entered sanctuary at the Church of the Advocate, a historically black church in North Philadelphia. This is only the second known time that an African-American church has given sanctuary to an immigrant facing deportation. The first came just 3 months ago in Boston. Both churches have activist traditions, but the Advocate especially so. When Reverend Renee McKenzie considered taking in Carmela and her family, an official in her diocese warned her that that might make the church the target of a backlash.
And my response was that the Advocate has always been a target. The Black Panthers had a meeting here in 1968, and that certainly would not have been acceptable in society. We hosted a Black Power conference in 1970. And then the first 11 women were ordained into the Episcopal priesthood. That happened in this building as well. And there was resistance to all of those things. But the Advocate continued to do what was right.
Why do you think there haven't been more alliances, more instances of solidarity between the Black community and the Latino or the immigrant community in the United States?
Black people are already in a marginalized space, so we're taught that we need to hold on and maintain what we already have, and that we live in a world of scarcity. And so to open the door to someone else may mean that they will take the little bit that we have.
The Advocate came to host Carmela thanks to Wendy Marshall, a congregant at the church.
Well, we have your back.
Who pushed them to join the new sanctuary movement to Philadelphia.
What do you say to people who would ask, why is the Church of the Advocate helping someone break the law?
Who cares about the law when the law isn't just? I mean, slavery used to be the law. You know, Jim Crow used to be the law. Mass incarceration is the law, right? Laws don't impress me.
Churches have given people refuge since at least the Middle Ages. But today they offer no real legal protection. Immigration and Customs Enforcement could get a warrant and arrest Carmela and her kids any day. But the authorities tend to avoid such bad optics. And since 2011, ICE has prohibited agents from entering sensitive locations in most cases. Still, this means Carmela and her kids can never leave the building. All 5 of them live in one room in the basement, sharing 3 mattresses and a beanbag chair.
Estoy entre 4 paredes, ¿verdad? Como si yo misma me fui a meter a una prisión, porque yo sé que no puedo salir.
¿En algún momento te has sentido aburrida acá?
Un poquito aburrida.
Mejor estar aburrida acá que
estar allá, porque yo sé que si estoy afuera, no voy a estar allá afuera. Ellos me van a sacar. Saben dónde estoy.
Carmela says she fled Mexico after organized criminals killed her brother and nephews, then threatened her. She asked for asylum after she got to the US, but after 2 years, her claim was denied, meaning automatic deportation for her and her kids. She entered the Advocate the night before her final appointment with ICE. Her lawyer is appealing her case while she's there. To pass the time, she helps the church staff when she can, including the cooks who make food for the soup kitchen.
The pork that I was telling you about, the piece of meat right here, I need you to season this.
La carne de cerdo que te estaba diciendo sobre el pedazo de carne aquí. Necesito sazonar esto.
¿Cuánto tiempo estás dispuesta a estar acá?
Si es 1 año, 2 años, 3, no sé. Yo sé que es tiempo perdido de mi vida, pero yo tengo mi familia aquí adentro, conmigo. Y me lo como yo nomás.
For the Church of the Advocate, taking in Carmela isn't risk-free. It's a federal felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison to hide an undocumented person from the authorities. Prosecutions are rare but not unheard of. Carmela's lawyer informed ICE directly that she was at the Advocate. That gives the church a strong case that they're complying with the law because they're not actually concealing her. But that legal argument hasn't been tested.
Would you be willing to spend 5 years in prison for having made this decision?
I wouldn't be happy about it. But, yes.
The Syrian military continued its strikes on the Damascus suburb of eastern Ghouta, a rebel-held area that's under siege by government forces. Last week, a carefully brokered evacuation agreement allowed for 29 critically ill residents, including children, to move to hospitals inside the capital. But hundreds more of the sick remain trapped, just part of a spiraling medical crisis playing out across Syria and in the neighboring countries where Syrian refugees are struggling to get the care they need.
Alaa is 10 years old and was born with a hole in his heart. The condition means that running around like any other kid can be seriously dangerous. The war in Syria left him without a father and meant he never received the treatment he desperately needed. He fled here to Jordan with his mother and sister in 2013 and now lives as an unregistered refugee. That means Alaa can't access Jordan's healthcare system, and the private alternative costs thousands of dollars that his family doesn't have. Charities and NGOs are doing their best to fill the gaps, and backlogs are agonizingly long.
وش تشعرين هسه؟
خايفة عليه بس احكي لك خايفة خايفة ابني وحيدي مالي غيره طلعت من الحرب مشان العون.
But after nearly 8 months, Alaa's mother Sahar finally got word that Alaa would be getting the surgery they'd been waiting for. In critical medical cases, refugees can be given treatment in Jordan's hospitals. But many of those, including Alaa, who need specialised care, can't get help. The British-born charity Chain of Hope supports a team of 7 medical volunteers from the US, led by Dr. Mark Turrentine, to travel to Jordan 4 times a year.
You could just stay over here and you'd never meet the needs of all the kids that are in the region. It gives you a different perspective of what it means to help people. This is kind of the old school medicine where you're in it for the reason of helping people. So if we have an opportunity to do it, you take that opportunity.
Dr. Turrentine has taken part in more than 20 missions like this one and treated more than 200 patients like Ala. He works alongside local medics in a private hospital to treat children with heart defects for free, many of them Syrian refugees.
How many children like Ala will you be operating on in this mission?
Well, the working list I have right now, just assembled from August, has over 30 kids on it. Okay, ear clamp, protamine, please. If you have a child in heart failure, it's very costly. It impacts the families in many ways, and that child most likely is not going to have anywhere close to a normal survival curve. And so there's a huge social cost as well as humanitarian one to the families for an unrepaired child. The post-repair shows that all 3 issues are gone and the heart function is good, so things went as planned.
The UN says that this year it needs more than $4 billion in total aid to help the 5.4 million registered Syrian refugees in neighbouring countries like Jordan. It's a small increase on their appeal for 2017, but they've only managed to raise about half of that.
شلونك؟ تمام شلونك؟ الحمد لله. شلونك؟ هاي فايف. منيح؟ أحسن؟
الحمد لله.
الحمد لله.
It's really cold out. And right on cue, Twitter has been overrun with climate deniers cracking tired jokes about global warming. But beyond social media jabs lies a serious and ongoing discussion about how scientists connect extreme weather, be it a cold snap, a hurricane, or California's extreme fire season, to underlying climate change. Because the truth is, this science is really new. The first proper climate attribution study was published in 2004. Before that, scientists had struggled to explain exactly how specific weather events were connected to climate change. Now, more and more solid, peer-reviewed studies show how climate change affects the likelihood and severity of extreme weather. And the studies are getting published really quickly after extreme weather events take place. Remember that study from 2004? It looked at a European heat wave that took place in 2003 and took a year and a half to complete. In contrast, just 3 months after Hurricane Harvey, scientists at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory published a study showing that Harvey dropped 38% more rain than it would have without underlying climate change. Another group, called World Weather Attribution, found that hurricanes that size have become 3 times more probable. Here's how Miles Allen, one of the authors of the first climate attribution study, explained why studies today are getting published so much faster.
When we performed the study in 2003 looking at the European heat wave, nobody had actually attempted to quantify the role of human influence on climate in a specific weather event. We are now looking at accelerating that whole process, because once you've agreed on the method you're using, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. The actual time it takes to actually do the calculations is not that long.
The developing science of attribution means scientists will have to completely reevaluate how they talk about extreme weather. Because terms like 500-year floods and 100-year droughts, terms that are supposed to indicate the frequency of a hazardous event, are becoming less and less helpful as frequencies keep changing. And it also means that in a few months, scientists should be able to explain the relationship between this cold snap and climate change. And projecting further into the future, it's entirely possible that we will soon hear scientists make these links as these events are happening.
We should be able to do this much faster, but in my view, in the long term, this should be part of the duties of the Weather Service. It's no longer enough for the Weather Service just to predict the weather. They should be in the business of explaining it as well.
Ready? No, nothing. Hey, it's Thomas. I'm in kind of inland Empire, California, on a patch of desert used for movie shoots and music videos. Today is a music video by Bhad, spelled with H's, who you probably know better as the Cash Me Outside girl, catapulted to fame last year on Dr. Phil at the tender age of 13.
And all these hoes laughing like something funny.
So the audience are a bunch of hoes?
Yeah. Catch me outside, how about that?
Huh?
Catch me outside, how about that?
What does that mean?
Catch her outside and she'll go outside and do what she has to do.
After capitalizing on her liberally transcribed catchphrase via t-shirts and extending her 15 minutes of viral notoriety by getting into a fistfight on a Spirit Airlines flight, Danielle Bergoli accepted an invitation to a recording studio to try to turn her bad girl image into a bad girl rap image. And it worked.
White wrist, white horse, high bitch, high bitch, high bitch, high bitch.
Danielle's great to work with, so it should be fun. We've got a while here in the desert.
How many times have you worked with her?
This will be our third video.
And action!
All right, and let's move on.
Catch me a check, little bitch. I zip it up, little bitch. Like I got a tech, little bitch. Hold on.
Yeah, it's funny, for like years, I mean, there, even among celebrities, like there's contracts drawn up so that if you behave poorly as, you know, a representative of such and such studio or label, you'd get kicked out for, you know, what's that called? It's like a morals clause. But when your entire brand is based on
Catch me a check, little bitch.
screaming profanities,
Little bitch. I'm on the set, we shooting it up. Like I got a tech, little bitch.
I guess it's all just good for the gander.
Your interview started now.
Oh, yeah.
Show them pills like they was scared.
Hi. How's it going with the video?
Good.
Can you run me through the plot? 'Cause I kind
Okay.
of pieced it together, but...
Okay, so there's two versions of me. There's the old me, and now there's this me.
Okay.
So this me is killing the old me, and then I'm burying the old me.
Did this shit all on my own, so I don't owe nothing. Ariana and Ariana, yeah, I know both of them.
Can you explain how you got signed to Atlantic?
They reached out to one of my managers, and they were like, "Oh, well, we think she has a voice. We want to bring her into the studio." I sat down with a writer, and we wrote verses, and they loved it, and they were like, "We want to sign you."
Do you just work with the one writer, or do you have a few different ones?
I have 3, but I'm really close with one.
Okay. Does it usually, like, the ideas start from one of you? Like, you bring the idea, or the writer brings the idea, and then you work on it? Or you guys kind of come up with stuff
like
together?
All different
Okay.
ways. Anything happens, honestly.
Oh, before you were on TV, did you want to be a musician?
I've always loved music. I just never thought that I would want to be a musician till I got here where I am, and I'm like, and I heard myself in the studio. I was like, wow, like this can work.
Everybody on my gram since I went public. Calling me fam, no we not cousins.
How do you feel about being viral? Is it cool?
I like it. It's just I still am 14.
Right.
So it's kind of like a lot sometimes, but I get through it. I seen this post. Someone posted it, said, "I've been 18 since I was 12," and it's like I could relate to that.
Where's your mom today?
She's about to be here.
Oh, okay. Is she required to be here on set, or are you able to kind of like, do you have to?
If I wasn't on probation, she wouldn't have to be here, but since I'm on probation.
What are the conditions then in terms of her being around? She has to have to...
She has to be like near me after 5.
That's not terrible. How long does that last?
Till I'm 19.
Let's go.
I think one of the major lessons of the last century in terms of child actors was don't do it. Basically, anybody who had any measure of success as a kid in the entertainment industry ended up horrible by age 20 or so. And this seems to be, you know, I've taken playing with fire to playing with dynamite, sort of, and taking kids who are already a mess and putting them in the spotlight, like as a reward for their bad behavior.
Sound like Britney Spears, like,
Nah, you sound a lot better than Britney Spears. No one's really ever taken someone off of daytime talk and made them into a mainstream celebrity.
Right.
We did that in like 3 months.
It's dirty as fuck, and it's getting me sick.
It's just all about like using music, building a foundation, and then just ultra branding. Just every branding trick in the book.
Yeah.
If you ever see her, she has the same hair, same outfit, same talk, same subject matter. It's just like staying consistent for as long as possible is just how you do it.
Yeah.
Young and rich in the mirror, I see both of them.
That's Vice News Tonight for Wednesday, January 3rd.